The most touching and probably the most memorable scene from the new episode of Digital Circus is definitely the meeting of Pomni and Gummigoo under the map, and also the last teaser memorized me one detail that completely proves everything I will say later. And even though everything seems clear, there's a lot more to their conversation than meets the eye. So let's find out what really happened between Pomni and Gummigoo. Gummigoo is one of the many NPCs that Kane creates specifically for various adventures. Initially, we introduced him as a villain who stole maple syrup from the Candy Kingdom, but then we realized that his mother and many of his villagers are sick, and only the syrup can help them cope with the disease. And this already shows him as a brave hero who risked everything to help his friends and family. We already know a lot about Pomni, but it is in the scenes under the map that she is fully revealed to us, and we realize what she is. Until the moment of meeting with Gummigoo, Pomni was very sullen, and even at the moment of getting under the map, we see the confusion on her face. And the alligator himself was also very frightened, especially when he saw the figures of all the characters who are the main characters of the kingdom. But he was scared most of all by his figure, and that's when he finally stopped understanding what was going on. And what would Jax or anyone else do in Pomni's place? They would just silently try to get out. Pomni starts talking to Gummigoo, and it's obvious that she's embarrassed to tell him that they're under the map because she knows what it means, and Gummigoo has no idea what it means. And while the alligator is trying to figure out why only the kingdom's inhabitants are here, we see how scared Pomni is, because by that point she still thinks Gummigoo is a terrible robber who would sacrifice Pomni for a cause. And even at the moment of the answer, we see Pomni's body shaking with fear. But she gathered all her courage and told the truth that Gummigoo and all the others are just ordinary game NPCs that don't exist. These words literally pissed off Gummigoo, which also made Pomni feel tense. But the moment when the alligator talked about his mother was the turning point in their relationship, because it was then that Pomni realized that Gummigoo is not really an emotionless NPC, but a game character of the best quality who is able to feel and analyze. When the situation reached a critical point and Gummigoo began to feel short of air, Pomni decided to calm him down and tried to change the subject of the conversation, and the unusual thing happens for NPCs. Gummigoo asked Pomni to tell the truth about him, and by the expression on Pomni's face, we realize that she is both sad and scared to open her eyes to the alligator about everything that is happening. However, we are not shown the scene of this conversation, but I am sure that this conversation was very hard for both Pomni and Gummigoo, and we see the result already at 15 minutes into the episode. Let's think a bit about what could have happened at that moment that Pomni turned from a distrustful character towards Gummigoo into the kindest and most sympathetic person in the world, and Gummigoo became very sad. I think that Pomni came to tell who NPCs are and why they are created. She told that his whole life is unreal, including the memories of his mother, his village, and his friends. All of this is simply not, and never was, and of course this information made the alligator sink into a deep depression from which it was not so easy to get out. However, this is the beginning of a new chapter in their relationship, as we see Pomni shaming Gummigoo for not helping her, but distracting herself to talk to Gummigoo about what's bothering him. And even though Gummigoo didn't see the point of talking at all because of all the above, Pomni didn't abandon him to save him, and listened attentively. And we see how difficult and awkward it is for her to start a conversation that feels like it's already doomed to fail. Pomni is actually a pretty good psychologist, because she starts the conversation by comparing herself to herself, and explaining that resentment, abandonment, and desolation are normal for sentient characters, and reminds Gummigoo of Max and Chad, who are still up there somewhere, and they're worried about Gummigoo. And then we hear a sad speech from Gummigoo in which he realizes that they are just a part of the circus characters' lives that they won't remember when they get home. And maybe these touching words were the start of Pomni's friendship with the alligator, because after that, she tried her best to cheer Gummigoo up. But more importantly, Pomni felt a warmth in her soul, and her pupils dilated as much as the moment she thought she could find a way out of the digital circus in the pilot episode. And so we understand that Pomni was now in that moment feeling the utmost pleasure at the mere thought that there might be someone in the circus who could be her support, but more importantly, be her friend, a real friend, not someone like Jax or Kinger, though her attempts were unsuccessful at first, because Gummigoo still didn't want to admit that anyone wanted him. She kept trying to convince the alligator to go to the digital circus with her. And when she finally succeeded, she felt the utmost satisfaction that now she will have a friend with whom she is happy. But unfortunately, she doesn't know what's in store for their duo at the digital circus. From the look in her eyes, you can tell that she felt something more than friendship. Maybe it's a kinship, maybe it's a crush. You can't say for sure because it's a digital circus and you can't be sure of anything, but there was definitely a good feeling in both characters. Gummigoo finally realized what's worth living for, and Pomni just found a character she's comfortable with. And then they even start joking around with each other, and there's no fear or apprehension anymore. And even when they are very scared, they are still just happy to be together. And it seems to me that even if there was no one else in the digital circus but them and Kane, it would still be a great place for Pomni, even though everything around her is unreal. And already during the meeting with everyone, we realize that Pomni and Gummigoo have finally become close to each other. And when Pomni informs everyone that Gummigoo is going with them, Ragatha was clearly surprised and as if she was against it, and most likely because she knew exactly what would happen next, because it is likely that similar situations have already happened in the circus before. And this awkward pose of Pomni at the moment of the conversation is very funny to me. And then came the most tragic moment of the second episode, and we saw how Kane destroyed Gummigoo in front of Pomni's eyes and thus finally destroyed all her plans, goals, and dreams. Pomni realized that her whole plan was nothing, and her false hopes made it worse not only for her, but also for Gummigoo, who also got the hope for a happy life in the future, in the digital circus, among the others. And if Jax wasn't too happy about it, then the others would be able to accept it gladly. And we see how Pomni was in a short depression after the loss of her best friend, and only the feeling of support from the others helped her to get out of this horror. And also the last teaser tells a lot about the relationship between Pomni and Gummigoo, because if in the final scene of the episode we saw only Kaufmo's funeral, in the teaser while everyone is celebrating the end of the adventure and enjoying sweets, Pomni herself took a picture of Gummigoo, which she put next to Kaufmo's picture, and alone memorializes her best friend, who literally in a day became her closest friend in the digital circus. Let's fantasize a little and imagine what could have happened if Kane had not been so principled or had simply not noticed Gummigoo. I think that Pomni would have hidden him in her room and they would have spent all their time together, playing, chatting, and just laughing and making friendly jokes at each other. And maybe then Pomni's life in the digital circus wouldn't be as gray as it is now. But even though Gummigoo is no longer with us and probably never will be, in our hearts, and especially in Pomni's heart and memory, he will remain forever. Maybe she will hang a poster of him in her room, or have Kane make a Gummigoo toy so that Pomni can always remember and feel the warmth she felt when she was around that beautiful alligator. But let's see if Gummigoo has a chance to return. In one of the scenes, Ragatha said that Kane likes to repeat NPCs in different adventures, so if Gummigoo is an NPC, it's likely that we'll see a small reference to the alligator in episode 7 or 8, and I'm sure it will make Pomni remember all the good things that happened to her in the second episode. However, there is one very crazy theory that came to light right after the teaser. Maybe Gummigoo is a person who has been living in the circus for a long time, and Kane doesn't show him for the sake of experimentation to see how the character behaves in complete loneliness, and only sometimes gives him the opportunity to participate in adventures while substituting his memory with what he will instill in him. After all, who would organize an NPC funeral? Maybe this is a hint to confirm this theory, but it seems to me that this is just a sweet fantasy invented by fans to avoid the fact that Gummigoo is dead forever and we will never see him again. What do you think about this theory and the relationship between Pomni and Gummigoo in general? Would they be able to live happily for the rest of their time in the digital circus, or at some point in their friendship there would be a crack and they would become enemies for each other? Write your opinion in the comments, and in the meantime, have a good mood and good luck, and bye-bye.